Scano, Ani, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, Orange Shirt Day, a day where we spend time together and remembering and honoring the children that sacrificed and was at the schools across our nation, the residential schools. And today we have a special guest, White Spotted Horse, and Jen. And before we get going with our time together, I'd just like to, start with a little Thanksgiving and acknowledge the beautiful morning that we've already had. Jen and I and some more of our sisters were gathering at the waters and for a sunrise ceremony with more of our community. And it was really beautiful. If we could do that every morning, gathering together, I think it would just be beautiful. So we can just hold that in our hearts and our minds and maybe do that remembering on our own as we do a Thanksgiving every morning. Just know that it's the people that surround us every day that really truly give us that love and energy that we need to move forward. That human connection is so valuable to us, and it's beautiful to know that we are returning back to those ways of gathering again on the land, surrounded by the beautiful energies and animals and all of those the beautiful medicines that are provided for us by the Creator. And I'd like to just start our time together by acknowledging our Mother Earth and the waters that keep us going. Mother Earth feeds us. She provides all of the sustenance that we need in the waters, with the fish in the waters that provide us for the food and clean the waters for us. And those sacred waters are us. The waters are us, and we know that they flow. The waters and flow through all of us, all the time, and knowing that it's sacred for us to keep those waters clean for our future incoming faces. And so nyawa and gratitude to the waters and the fish that are in the waters, and the plants and the food plants and the medicine plants that keep us healthy and adorn our beautiful lands. Right now with those beautiful leaves changing and falling to the ground, we're noticing that it's time for change, and it's time to prepare for the colder weather. And it excites us to know that, things are changing and it's okay. The natural world shows us that it is okay, and it is a part of the human world too. They remind us, just going through those seasons, that the cycle of life is what we're supposed to acknowledge and cherish. And so nyawa to all of those plant medicines and the grass and those animals that dance on top of those beautiful meadows, and four-leggeds and the trees that stand tall and remind us to stay connected as best as we can to our roots and grounded and knowing our homelands and where we're from and who we are. That's what those trees represent to me, and how high they touch the sky, reach up to the sky, remind us to do our best to stay connected to, the star world and the winds and the directions and everything that comes every day to us. And today, our guest, White Spotted Horse, was saying, send us some of that sunlight over here. It's a little windy and cooler. And so, we send you the light that we have within us. Alan, thank you so much for being with us. Today it looked like we were, the sun was a bit covered. It's come out now, but those thunder beings, we honor those as well, because they do come in to clear the land and I think really shift us in a way as well, to remind us that things are changing, and we give gratitude to those thunder beings and also Grandfather Sun, who came out to warm us up and prepare us for this time with you. grandmother Moon, who is just amazing, and we wait for her to come and know that her cycles, when we pay attention to her cycles, she just keeps us on track. And it's really wonderful to be able to stay connected to her, because it keeps us grounded in who we are, as women, and as people. And again, just mentioning those stars and those enlightened ones and those that came before us that have taught us, and that have paved the way for a lot of this work that we're doing right now. I honor my ancestors who continue to show up to guide us on this walk together, and on our healing journey forward. Really, it's time, and we're really blessed. And I give and offer gratitude to the Creator who made us all, so that we could be here today and every day, in love and relationship and kindness. And thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who have come, you're supposed to be here. And all of the messages and conversations and words that we share are for us today, to know that we can put them inside our hearts and know that it's time for us to come together and heal the pain that was once here, and know that it makes us all stronger together. So if those of you who are joining us today or later, this is the time that you can just bring in someone or something else that maybe I didn't mention that your mind is on, and someone that may need some extra love and attention. We can bring those people, and in that energy right now, let's bring them into this space and really let's hang out together and share some good words and some good energy and spread it as far as we can across our nation. Yawa for joining us.
Ani, hi, I'm Jen. My spirit name is Nimki Kwe, and I'm here to offer a song before our talk starts. And the song that I'm going to sing is called the Wildflower Song. And this song came to Barbara Hooper in a vision. And there's two parts to this song. It's a song written about the protection of children. And the vision that she had was of a mother in a field, and her children were playing. And she told the children that if you hear me call this certain call, it means that danger is near. Maybe Indian agents or government officials were coming. And that when they heard her sing this song, they would go and hide in a safe place. And when they got to a safe place, they would sing back to her. So there's a little bit of a call and response, and it represents the children telling their mother that they are safe, and then later the mother telling them, that they could come back and that the danger was gone. So it's a song that we often sing on September 30th because it is for the children. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Another song came to me first. That was our welcoming song. It must have been welcoming the ancestors to come. That happens sometimes. Hey, 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 hey,
Miigwech.
What a nice way to start our time together.
Oh yeah, it was a beautiful song.
Yeah.
My
And yeah.
spirit was lifted, as they say. Vibration and song can do that.
And it feels so good even here right beside her. It's beautiful. We spent the morning singing in pipe ceremony, so we were honored with being able to sing while they did their pipe ceremony. And it's amazing how we did how many rounds, like I think for half an hour. I think we sang for half an hour straight,
It
Jen and
didn't
I.
feel like that.
It didn't feel like that at all, because for that reason, you're singing and all of a sudden the vibration of you and then the people surrounding you, and you could just feel that energy lift, and it was beautiful. And we could feel the ancestors come in, and it's a privilege to be able to do this and out on the land and with community. It's so honoring. So Scano Jody Nigasso, my name is Jody, and I'm a co-founder of Grandmother's Voice. And this platform began in 2020, and maybe a little bit before, in a time where we just entered COVID. And then it was shortly after we began sharing the stories of the residential school survivors from across Ontario. It was just spirit led, where the elders were saying it's time, we need to reach the people. When COVID happened and we went in lockdown, and it was, we need to reach our elders, we need to reach the people and make sure that they're okay. And they were like, how do we do that? And I said, I don't know, I think we press a button here on Facebook somewhere. And then we were connecting with people across our nation. And so we're really grateful that those of you have, joined us today. You have this, you'll have this gift after today to be able to share with your friends and people, to say that, hey, there are these videos on Grandmother's Voice that share the messages of peace and love and hope and wellness for the people. And so Nyawa for joining us. So White Spotted Horse, Alan Sutherland, and it's so wonderful to see you here.
Yeah, Miigwech. Very much. I'm very grateful for the song that you shared with us for the world. That's why we take to social media, we took to Facebook, and we took into other ways to speak about our truth. And truth has a way of piercing through darkness. Just like when I first came on Facebook, I friended people I grew up with, family, friends, my community. I was in touch with my community. All of a sudden, I was able to keep track of who had passed on, and what's going on in our people's lives. But along the way, it became a place of high tension, of griping, and it was very stressful after a while. People calling each other down, spreading gossip. So I made it an effort that every fall I'm gonna take out the weeds, as you will, from the garden. And I unfriended a whole bunch of people I grew up with, even family members. Because if you were to put somebody down, or you're not encouraging others to be lifted up, or you're swearing, or spreading gossip, and it's all in a negative, you were unfriended. So so for me, it wasn't about numbers. For me, it was about, okay, and eventually it ends up being a strong network of support. And there's a lot of positive messages. And for me, it's the means to stay in contact with my network by spreading, good teachings, things that we need to know about today, and not so much what's happened in our past, but the past is there for our learning, the lessons. But how do we all together lift ourselves up to move forward? So I just wanted to, I always pay attention to our conversations, Jody, with anyone, because it's like downloads. It comes from our spirit guides. It comes from higher source, and it just brings a thought into one's mind, and then images come through, even songs and stories come through, and and usually that's how I know maybe this is how the conversation will move forward. So in a way, your song, the song that was sung this morning, brought in a lot of great images, memories, and I wanted to spend at the end with our conversation is I'll sing a song, and it's called "A Child Is Born Today" to end our conversation today. So I'm just gonna grab. I'm gonna be rising up here. I'll be grabbing my shaker. One moment. Have this ready, and maybe one more. All right. All right. This here is what we call shakers. We bring into our ceremony, and it tells a story of all creation. The sound you hear is basically the vibration that creates everything. In time, I guess I don't know who would call it a rattle, like maybe like they see in a rattlesnake. I don't know, but who would want to give a rattlesnake to a baby? But it was called a rattle. But we just say these are the shakers. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I'm gonna be doing this pleasant shaker for the children. So let me introduce myself. Wabski Meneses Misatem Nisnakaz, Bijuri Dodem, Ishkunaning Doji, Treaty 2 territory, Nishnave Sotonim, Anishinaabe. And I introduced myself as White Spotted Horse of the Lynx Clan, from Skowhenan First Nation of Treaty 2 here in the center of Manitoba. I currently live in Treaty 1 just outside of Winnipeg. And I'm Alan Sutherland. That is who I am. That's how I go. That's how I work in this world, is that English name. Anyway, we're doing things today where I'm merging both of them together, which is meant to be, is have your spirit name and along with your other identity, and that's your bundle. Now, this is a special day. It's a long time coming. And I want to give you a little bit of history, how it leads to this this special day. It's known as the Red Shirt Day, but it's Truth and Reconciliation as this formal holiday day name. But most Canadians don't know exactly what led us here. And that's what Truth and Reconciliation is about. It's part of the calls of action, 94 calls of action. And one of its main features in the calls of action is that Canadians should know Indigenous peoples and what happened to them in the context of the development of Canada, which leads to this special day. So I'm primarily known for the last over 20 years as a historian, an Indigenous historian, of a provider of historical culture awareness sessions. And along the way, I had mentors that were doing such work, such as the late Jules LaValle, where later on we worked together. in the case of the environment of the health system, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, where we got together talking about culture. But I said, Jules, we just can't talk about the good things about what we have. It's not a pleasant story actually. Let's talk about what we were in terms of that culture, how strong we were, highly advanced human beings, like I like to say. But what happened to us? What was the story that bring us into our current predicament in the healthcare system, where essentially, as Indigenous people, when they were still ignored, we still don't get the best service, even though they've been doing cultural awareness for the longest time. But if you're over 30,000 health workers, and they don't give you a date to when to go to a 2-day workshop, you could be there in a career and not go to one of these Indigenous workshops. So they didn't do it too good. They basically says go. Eventually, you all gotta go, but they didn't give them the mandate to say you got to do it within a certain time frame. Now, when the Truth and Reconciliation report came out, and all the mayors of Canada were all gathered to see the first draft of it, our mayor is an Indigenous mayor at the time, Mayor Bowman, was inspired of what needs to be done, because they went over the 94 calls of action, and he came back to the city council and saying, this is what the country is about to go into, this national mandate, and we need to be the first. He says, we have the highest population of Indigenous people in Winnipeg, which is 10%, which is a million. 10% is quite large, 100,000 Indigenous people, which would be ending. It still is the fastest growing segment of the Winnipeg population. But there was so much racism. There was a Maclean magazine, and a friend of mine, Roseanne Deerchild, had published Winnipeg as the most racist city in Canada. Well, everybody is upset. But anybody that does this work, seeing it for what it is. First of all, it's truthful. Of course, everybody getting upset, but it's truthful. But it was an opportunity to have conversations. So this city was primed to say, we don't want to be labeled as the most racist city in Canada. So they were desperately looking for solutions. It was at this time the mayor proclaimed that we're gonna provide Indigenous cultural awareness for all the city workers, which is 10,000. Now, I was already there providing historical cultural awareness for recruits of the police force, the fire paramedics, and I'm already had a template. So basically, we were ready to go. We got it done in 3 years, and it was mandatory. But they wouldn't call it mandatory because it just pushed people away. Like, oh gosh, no, I'm going to resist. I don't like the word mandatory. So they call it universal awareness, in the beginning, but everybody forgot that. Because what started happening, there was resistance. But there were some departments that embraced it, will jump right in because they already had experience with this. And that's the police, and it was the fire paramedics, and so forth. So they started booking us because we were doing it every week. But the ones that resist are the frontline workers, the one that has to deal with our Indigenous population. And they're not going to see the best of us because they're dealing with street people. And this is where the stereotype comes in. This is where you paint the brush that we're all this way. We're all in trouble. We're all street peoples. We're all part of gangs. I can go on and on, statistics galore everywhere. But that's not who we truly are. We are the most studied population group in Canada. And they just rehash these statistics because it doesn't improve. It just, here it is. Numbers getting bigger, but here it is. It's not getting easier. And what was always missing was true effort from all of society, all our systems, to really look and say, where did this started happening? Why is it happening? Why it has this tremendous impact when it comes to homelessness and suicides and violence and so forth? And I always observe this. I work in the healthcare systems. I always said it's because some is and I try to educate what colonization was all about. Is it brought tremendous trauma to Indigenous peoples in their communities, but this trauma is systemic. It's a Canadian trauma. Now the old saying about, you put this experiment. I don't know how true if somebody actually did it, but you got two pots and one of them is boiling and one of them is not turned on yet, but you put in a frog and it perish in the boiling water. Put the other frog into the other one and then turn on the heat, full blast. But it takes slowly before it boils, and it's gonna adopt to the heat. Well, maybe eventually it'll perish. But that's trauma. And if it becomes too much of a norm, then you're not so well. There's something wrong. So you need solutions. And I always talk about, we are the solutions. We are the Canadians. We, all of us, if we're all on the same page, on the same table, we're all looking at the same data, we're all want the effort to improve for us, all peoples of Canada. We need to understand where we came from. How did we end up in this situation? So I started my work with diversity and equity, business planning for companies, why they should hire more Indigenous peoples. But after a while, the work was focusing on just on Indigenous plight, Indigenous people. Because most Canadians, most Winnipeggers, most Manitobans had no idea who Indigenous people were about. Even till recently. There's still a lot of work to be done because we're a big population. But the results, what happened is very promising. Even Maurice Sinclair, the Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner, retired judge, retired senator. Now he's launching his book about his career. He's one of those pivotal figures in history that from his position, he did a lot of great work. But he was quoted by saying that, and I hope he lives a long time, that he probably will not live to see reconciliation. Now, for me, that wasn't my personal view. I believe when you put in a good harvest, you should get results. You put in the work and you should get results. And I was quite surprised because here in Manitoba, it's now going to be 18 years. And I've been with them, maybe it'll be 16 years. I've been with them all this time. And this is the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba that want to focus on educating Manitobans what is treaties. Now, we all come from different backgrounds when it comes to the subject of treaties. As a historian and who has experience working for all levels of government, since that time joining them, I have developed a historical timeline poster, basically a picture that captures this history. I'm known for that, the Canadian Indigenous history, that shows a line that, history goes through like a line. And then there's this different color lines. There's a light blue, that's the French. And then there was what shows up later was the blue, the darker blue, which is British. And then it became this solid blue later, which is Canadian timeline that talks about events as you go along. Now, the Indigenous timeline was basically a red line that was together. And then they were tight. And it lasted a long time until events shifted. But they're still tight. Until more and more people were now flocking into the New World, and there was a lot of changes. But there were treaties along the way that helped consolidate this new relationship. But the split started happening. And when I teach it, I talked about the time of Confederacy, that the Canadians, who have no direct relationship with the nations throughout the country, had put it upon themselves to make laws on the British North American Act that essentially give them the powers to govern. And yet they know full well that they have to make treaties first before they even think about a country from coast to coast to coast. You even seen Queen Victoria that remind them that in order to create a country, you're going to have to go to the nations and get their consent. And this way you allow people to come and live with them. So it's very clear, this crown relationship. But we're talking about characters in that history like John A. Macdonald. It was a historical, well-known historical bigot, racist, drunkard, flawed, but he was a lawyer. And some will say he was a brilliant lawyer because he kind of knew how to make laws. But unfortunately, part of his lawmaking included the Indian Act, because he started off with Section 9124. Basically says the province don't have this relationship with the First Nations. It's at the federal level that has this relationship. And then later on, government changed that by transferring natural resources to the province. So that's illegal. That's still in the books. That has to be struck down. But anyway, Section 9124 essentially says we, the federal government, are in charge of Indians and their lands. So that's a constitutional baseline. Later on in 1876, they made treaties, Treaty 1, 2, 2, all the way to Treaty 6. But in this time period, they launched the Indian Act, which still exists to this day. No other country in the world has a human race legislation or laws over a group of people, but Canada still has one. Reason why they developed this is because they didn't want to share. And treaties was all about sharing. They did not want to share one dime with the original nations. And yet the treaty was all about sharing and opening up to immigration, new people to come and live in their territories. It's a beautiful story that should have been told in that format right from the start in our schools, but they didn't, because that left confusion. We had this idea that we must have been like the United States of America, that there was these Indian wars and they, basically forced people on reservations. And you see that in John Wayne movies and such, A Little House on the Prairie. So we're bombarded by the books and movies and such. And then we think, oh, that's Canadian history. Far from it. If they only told the truth that we had a beautiful relationship for almost 300 years to get to know each other, it was the honeymoon stage. Essentially, it was the golden years of the fur trade. More people were showing up. Can we live with you? Treaties were made along the way. The peace and friendship treaties in the beginning by saying, can I be your neighbor? And that started out long time ago, 1600s. Then along the way with a proclamation, because more and more people were just taking over lands that are not theirs. So in 1764, we made a treaty together with the British, with the Crown, saying we're allies. But it outlined a modern treaty that basically says that we recognize you are nations, we recognize those are your territories, we recognize you have your own governing systems, your own ways. That we, if we want to live with you or do business with you, we have to make a treaty with you. And then you'll be compensated. We'll negotiate what that will look like. So this was a precursor to all the modern treaties that we have today, especially when Confederacy needed a foundation to build a government on. And that foundation was Treaty 1 to 11 that essentially can connect now from coast to coast and coast. And that's how British Columbia joined, because he said if you can build a railway system within 10 years, we'll join this confederacy. So there is so much to learn from history in itself. You can't bury it, but Canada attempt to bury it by not sharing any of this with Canadians. But that also means you're sharing this with future leadership, future politicians, future lawyers, future judges. Your system is going to be based on a lie. And this became a blind spot. Meanwhile, Indigenous people under the Indian Act were segregated. They were locked up in reserves where a lot of us, especially here in our parts, were hunter-gatherer societies, but we lived by the different 4 seasons, and it's circular. So we do things. We're always busy. We're always on the move. We're mending our canoes, getting ready for the summer. Then we go and plant our gardens, and then we go and harvest. We go and get our medicines, and we get ready again. We're going, but we have a good time. We gather with other nations. We do ceremonies. We do healing. We do trades. And it's beautiful. Because life is not about working too hard. It's always about having time to enjoy life. Like the song that you shared. I really enjoyed it. So when you go into the fall, you're gathering, you're getting ready for the winter, and this is where we are with things. This is a time of blessings. This is a time of gratitude. This is time to honor our ancestors. Have reflection. How did a summer go? How did that last cycle go? Because you're now thinking about, we got to get ready. We got to teach our children. We're going to go into our dwellings, and we're going to teach everything that we know for them. So as soon as the snow starts falling, it's the teaching and songs that begin. And then we start the cycle all over again. So what I'm giving you is a way of storytelling. It's almost like I have my nephews and niece sitting in front of me, and we're around the fire, and they have questions, and they says, Uncle, could you tell us the story of Canada, and why did we end up the way we are today? And I always will start off by saying, nephew, niece, you can tell your parents, you can tell everybody that you see that first of all, we're very strong human beings, and we're meant to be here. And I can go into the origin stories at this point by saying the 4 spears that was placed on Manitugitigan, the Creator's Garden, and how each will be diverse because the Creator wanted it that way. The Creator wanted diversity. He wanted to have, there are so many places on this earth that people can thrive and excel, like those in the far north or the far south, or those on hot places and deserts or in cold and rainforests and so forth. There are going to be people all over the garden, and they're all going to have their own identity, their own language, their own culture. And that's beautiful because the garden itself is so beautiful. It has its plants, it has its trees, has different locations, different temperatures, and so forth, different seasons. So, my nephew, my niece, that alone takes a while. But to know this, when one of them came over, and then later on he invited others to come over, at first they depended on us. They really needed us to survive. They were pitiful. They had no way to feed themselves. They had no shelter. They were defenseless to the environment. And through our kindness and compassion, we helped our fellow brother and sisters. And then they were starting to establish themselves, and they made treaties and this peace and friendship of being good neighbors, and good neighbors to each other. And this went on a long time. No, and when I get into the other side of the world, on their perspectives, what they seen was opportunities to have your own property, your own land, grow things from it. Freedom of religion. You don't have this class systems. You don't. So there was a lot of freedom, and everybody was looking after each other until more and more showed up, and they want to become governance. So you got the British, you got the French, you got the Spaniards, and so forth. So they bring their systems over. And most of their systems is male dominant. It's bureaucracy is the military model of a hierarchy and who's in charge. King and queens and so forth go down. And it's very little can be said from the people themselves. In this history, they also don't recognize women role and responsibility other than bringing a child into a world and caring for those children. But it was a man's world. It was a man's energy. But the world wasn't all that way. On one side of the world was a feminine energy, where the women's roles were the leadership. They were the leaders. They were nurturing. There's a different type of energy. They look after the people. They look after the village. On the other side of the world, it became male, masculine energy of dominance. Dominance is the key here. Controlling with strength and might and fear. So one is nurturing, the other one is fear. Now they came over. Oh, they had visitors in the past, and I can go into them. There was all the Chinese dynasty mapped out the West Coast. There was the Vikings and so forth. But the history that they want me to know was there are three things in this history. That's what I grew up with. That we crossed over. We're part of them during the land bridge and repopulated. They want to make sure that we're not original, that we're part of them. And yet our oral history talks about who we are prior to the Ice Age. I heard the ancient stories. Now, instead of having this archaeological fact that, that we came in 13,000 because they found evidence and a rough instrument that says that we were here around that time, 10,000 years ago, of Clovis Man, New Mexico. But they're calling this dark archaeology, where there's so much evidence now of human beings. They're on this side of the world we call North America. Turtle Island is our story. That goes back 18, 24, 30, 50,000 years ago. But in our stories, we were here from the beginning. So anyway, that's the thing that they were trying to brainwash us children into something that was not truthful. They wanted to eradicate our knowledge keepers, the transition from our ancestors to who we are. So they wanted to control the curriculum. The second thing they wanted to do is that we're just we're from the caveman days. We're subhumans. We're not good enough. Like we're inferior, uncivilized, just hunter and gatherers. You know, we lived in wigwams and teepees and bone and arrows. And there are all those elements that are truthful. But the thing is, we're very adoptive people. If there was something else we can do better, like why not travel the whole continent and travel all the riverways by using a canoe? We did. You know, one of the truths that came forward was they said that the horse was always here, but they try to say, oh, the Spaniards brought it over and then, the Plain Nation stole it. No. There's all kinds of evidence now that shows that all the different species of horses that were present, and there's an ancient one because they can do DNA research. And the third thing I wanted to say that they want to hit home was Christopher Columbus discovered us, like world events, world history. The clock starts at 1492. These other things don't matter. And he discovered us. Like I said, in history, there's many other visitors, but he gets the credit. That's because the Italians needed heroes, and they were too prosecuted, and there was racism against the Italians. They needed their inroads. They needed heroes, so they really went to town with him. So what's this have to do with reconciliation? Everything. Everything's in cycles. I don't watch local events or national news like I used to. Why? Because everything's predictable. Everything's in cycles. So there's a little pushback against this emblem right here. I don't know if you see it. Every child matters. Now they're trying to say copyright. Who owns that? Well, it doesn't matter. It's a movement. When there's a movement, it goes on its own. It's meant to be. It's a gift to the world. We live in a society where people are trying to claim their idea. Throughout history, there's not one idea. There's always been one or two or three ideas that happen at the same time, like electricity and phones and so forth. History teaches us that. As a healer, as somebody who works with spirit, understands our super consciousness, we're all part of that. That's the original internet. So who can claim that they have the original idea? You know, there's many ways I can talk about this, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to talk about why reconciliation, why reconcile, because I gave you the original place to start, because they didn't want us to be part of this progress called Canada. And Kanata means our village. It means that the original village is that we're all part of it. But somewhere along the way, we had this great relationship in this village, and it was growing and growing, and more people were coming, and they're adopting to the customs of North America. It was a good thing, because you bring in the strengths of all worlds, and it creates more and more and more. So somewhere along the way, somebody says, well, we're now in charge of this village. No grandmother is going to be in charge of this village. It's going to be us Canadians. So next thing, but that may have been a plan, because they made these laws prior to the British North American Act that essentially says we got to make laws over Indians and their lands. So they were planning. In the meantime, they're doing their best behavior. You know, we're allies. We defend Canada so many times, and we're looking forward to the beautiful future. because we had a relationship over 300 years. But now we have to formalize more of a marriage, more of an agreement, these treaties, because the grandmother says, look after them, make them be part of this village, make it formal, let's do a treaty. So if you were to use a metaphor that this was supposed to be a marriage, well, they said, let's get married, let's finalize it. So there was a ceremony, and they married. Everybody's happy, they're celebrating, yay. In the meanwhile, the Canadians started taking over. They started changing everything. And he says, well, you're not going to be part of this village. In fact, we're gonna keep you on the side over there, hidden from everybody else in that back area. But don't worry, we're going to make sure that you don't starve to death. Oh, at first you probably are going to be starving, but that's okay, you'll survive. Eventually, you're gonna be looked after us, because that's our marriage now. That's the way we're setting it up. So they're saying we're the boss. From now on, you got to listen to us, because you started off with this treaty, and you gave us the power to make laws over your own people. But at the same time, we created a document called the Indian Act that gives us the power over you, even though you didn't sign it. But there it is. Can't do nothing about it. So that's what happened. Indigenous people were segregated for the longest time. They can't challenge it. They can't go to courts. And now this is the one that broke us. There could have been resistance. Our population was so vast, highly outnumbered the newcomers, the Canadians. And they, through treaty, says we'll give up our warrior system, our warriors, for this new law to be for everyone. And this Royal Mounted Police was going to be launched at Lower Fort Garry in 1874 to go in the West to protect all the nations, especially against the Americans. And they agreed. Okay, we'll all follow the law. But when you're on our lands, though, you got to follow our laws. When we're on your land, we go under your. But they want to expand that law system, that law and order. And they will use it and they'll abuse it. So one of them had an idea. I know the Queen promised to make schools for everyone, including the original peoples, because they had schools already. You understand what schools are. It's supposed to be the equalizer. Everybody gets the same education. But one of those had an idea, especially Bishop Grandin. We had to do a name change in one of the major travel routes in Winnipeg. And nobody understand why do they want to take his name off? It's because he's one of the founders of genocide, like John A. Macdonald. He was the Bishop of the West that says, don't build those schools on reserves. Let's build industrial schools, those models that were in Europe, where they take homeless children and put them in those schools. And then they sell them off to the trading post, and that's another history. But just don't lose the opportunity, because that's where the words come from, to kill the Indian and the child. What does that mean? Well, let's wipe away their identity. Let's take everything that made them strong, take away that knowledge, take away medicines, and take away that strength and everything. And then you take them away from their communities so that they are separate from all that influence. And you got them for 10 years. So the law was, in 1887, when they introduced this to the floor in the House of Commons, this is a good thing. And from the age of 5 to the age of 16, it was a law. So that's why I like your T-shirt there, because it says 150,000 Indigenous children went to school. And I'm one of them. I'm 3 generations myself. So that is the most, they did all kinds of things, like take the roles of women from our leadership. But the one that really hurt us, because they took away our leaders, they took away our warriors, but we still survived. But what they really did was take away the children. And we couldn't do anything. You try to resist. That's why the RCMP was there to enforce this. The priest will show up, the Indian agent will show up, and the RCMP shows up. And if you resist, that's why they build one of our penitentiaries here, is Stony Mountain Penitentiary. It was put in place in 1878 for the very fact they're going to arrest chiefs who resist. And then any father that wants to hang on to their little daughter who's 4 years old and they're going to take her from you is 4 to 6 years hard labor working in the quarries just for the fact that you're a father. The same rocks that they bring out of the quarry end up building up most of those buildings in downtown and the government house of Winnipeg. So when I see that yellow stone, I'm just thinking about all the blood, sweat, and tears. How this in our building. So this went on. This whole legacy of Indian residential school legacy has went on since 1997. It was 96, but there was one last one in 97, which is not too long ago. But it went on so long to brainwash and reprogram a population of Indigenous children to have shame in their mothers and fathers and their ancestors. And they brought in new programs that say to be a good Indian is, you got to do these things. You got to be religious programming. This went on too many generations. Now, I'm a historian because I was raised by my grandparents, who was able to raise me when in 1971, they rescinded the act, the mandatory taking of children. So I was able to go from Winnipeg, and I was kicked out of a Roman Catholic church run by nuns. With all those straps didn't do anything to me. It just hardened me. So they gave up on me. Who gets kicked out of kindergarten? This guy. But it was a good thing because my grandparents want to raise me. Because they didn't have a chance to raise my mother or my uncles. They had to go to Indian residential schools. So I was raised by my grandparents who never had the option in the first place to raise their own children. And I raised with the values and mentorship of elders. And they told me the stories. They told me their experience. And as a little child, I didn't, I looked bored most of the time. But one thing I knew about your subconscious mind and the super consciousness that connects to the universe is that when you need it, it'll come to you. Then one day, Jules LaValle looks at me, he says, Alan, do you know the 7 sacred teachings? And I didn't want to say yes. I was just happy to listen in circles. I always observe, I've always listened, always took it in. But I think this old man wants to tell me to talk about the 7 sacred teachings. And I can't lie to an elder. So I said, yes. Good, you tell them. That was I've been telling people historically events, talking to people about diversity and equity and laws. But now I have to talk about culture. But I did know it because I've been sitting in the circles for a long time, went to ceremonies. And I've been talking about that ever since. So I just wanted to say it's all embedded in the history that we need to review, we need to look at, but we don't need to be stuck there. If we're stuck there, it's because of the pain, because of the trauma. It's a story that we tell when we're victims. And we're going to have victims. We're going to have those stories because people need to bring it out. They got to know where that anger is coming from, where that hurt's coming from, that pain and that grieving, where it's coming from. That trauma needs to be healed. It's in our tissues. We got to go deep, especially when it comes to anger. It's not a brain thing. It's in our whole system. Because you'll feel it. You'll feel the chemicals when you're angry or you're very sad. And your body will say, yeah, man, there's so much in here that you have to deal with. And it'll show up in our tears. It'll show up with a lack of voice, with it shaking. It'll show up because we don't know how to talk or bring it out. So we need to heal all that. And one thing that I learned about teaching in a large group, this history was, it was me learning historically the human condition. Why do people do what they do? So I became a historian of the world. I was raised Roman Catholic, so I learned about the biblical history, the history of the Bible, because that had an impact on me and my community. But I got to understand what is the motivating thing here. It's control. When the teaching says that when you come to this world, it's love. You come from the source of everything, it's love. You come from the creator, it's love. That's your first emotions, is love. Now you come into this world, it's now fear. The fear of this new place, this heavy place. So it becomes the bookends. At the end of life, you have that fear of the unknown because this programming says, oh, you got one life. Or you're going to go to purgatory, or you're going to go to hell, or you made it. You go to heaven. Oh, I heard it all. Not only Christianity, I heard it from all religions. There's good, a lot of good. But then there's programming, dogma. You have to sort it out. So this world is based on control. If you look at the history of religious groups, there's a marriage, a collusion between the governments, ruling bodies with the church. And guess what happened to indigenous people? This collusion started immediately with the Jesuits coming over. And it became more entrenched when they created laws by saying, from Bishop Grandin, we have to be involved. The church needs to be involved. So the residential school was run by the church. So it's collusion of government and the church. And that creates chaos to this very day. So a lot of people have to sort it out. So what I have learned, that the big picture stuff is applicable. But along the way, I cannot help the larger group because it takes a long time. I've been doing this for 20 years. Then I started getting more and more into the healing aspects of our culture. And I learned more and more about healing in general. I follow spirit, and spirit took me everywhere. And it's all about love. That is the medicine. So I started working on individuals, one-on-one or small groups, by looking at them and saying, how are you doing? I pay close attention to their stories. I can tell that they're reverting back to their inner child where they left themselves. But their bodies will tell them there's something going on, there's something wrong here. So I do a lot of that work now. I teach it now. What is that? What is that all about? So I just wanted to share my story as an observer and a teacher by saying, when we look at why we're here today, is to reconcile all that. See, Canada plagiarized. I can talk about our Constitution 1982. I can talk about events where people standing up and protesting, and 1990s, the Indian Summer, and I can talk about this pressure from Canadians after a while became the one that's going to pressure government, and how this pressure has led to truth and reconciliation. But as in this time period in South Africa, that colonized country borrowed the laws of Canada, and they call it apartheid. Ours is the Indian Act, but it's the very same template. So public pressure from the world against apartheid in the 80s have the release, Nelson Mandela. And his first task, they made him president. But he had a lot of time to think about this, how to reconcile all this hurt, all this pain, this colonization. So he announced that before we can do anything, we're going to have to look at the truth. We're going to have to look the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, but also the blessings that come along too. So they did that. They took all the stories, especially from bureaucrats, especially those that enforce these laws, the one that enforced colonization, that created the hurt. And that's the healing that came in. The healing was to forgive if you're ready. But the healing was that we have to incorporate that in our system where there are the means of doing the healing. That is how you reconcile everything. It's not to be a victim of your past, but say this is something that we got to learn from. But the transition is to how do I heal from there to come over here in this present moment where we need to do this together as a society. How can we reconcile all this? Because you got to be guided by the lesson. You got to be guided by the truth. But there has to be the healing incorporated in it. And the future has to be made based on that process. You cannot touch the future. There's no such thing as touching the future, but you can grab the seeds of your work and harvest the future. You just throw it on your path and eventually it'll take form and you'll see what develops from it. So if it stays in a victimhood or blaming and negativity, it's not going to be a good batch of seeds. But if we were to do this together and heal together and reconcile together and create a positiveness out of it, we throw the positive seeds and that's going to catch hold. Anyway, that's how I want to describe the metaphor. So reconciliation is our journey, all of us, not the government's grand schemes, because that was the problem in the first place. Not somebody else's ambition or their version of the future. It's really our individual journey in terms of the original medicine is love. But we're going to go through this pain, this cocoon period where that's a struggle now. Those that want to hang on to their institution, their heaviness, they're hanging on tight. Then there is this bloom, there's like a flower that blooms. There's this love it's like going through the soil. It's branching out. It's trying to reach to the sun. That's our cocoon period right now, because we're going to fly together. It's going to be like hundreds and hundreds of butterflies everywhere. But right now, there's pushback. Right now, there's people who says, "Oh, I don't want this. Reconciliation's too long." Well, yeah, it's 9 years. It's going to be 10 years, and it takes time to heal a country. So we might make in some regional areas like Winnipeg, we did a lot, but there's still a lot more to do. But you can go to other places where they didn't do so much. They're just starting out. Yeah, it'll take time. Where all this took more than 155 years, and it's only 9 years, reconciliation or that mandate is going to be a while. It's going to be a while because when I look at the gap between Indigenous people and the rest of the population, we're like 15, 20 years yet. Maybe 18. But we're making progress. And that's why I want to say to Marie Sinclair, I gone to the schools. I gone to organizations. I gone to my bank where they use this day, September 30th, wearing their red shirts, and they're doing activities that's related to Call of 94. I have seen it with my own eyes from children who are now going to university, and they got the right information. They're going to be great leaders in the future. But we all have to do this. So anyway, I want to finish off with a song, if that's okay. Okay? All right. This song is from my mentor, the late Jules LaValle, and he sang all kinds of songs. And one of them is, I think it's Margaret Dumas from up north, shared this song with him. Anyway, of course, I learned a lot of his songs, and I'll sing this one. And I still use it in a sweat lodge. A child is born today. I'm going to just two push, because almost every song has 4 push-ups. A child is born today, and he will live the Indian way. Way-ah, hey-ah, hey. Way-ah, hey-ah, hey. And a child is born today, and he will be a Anishinaabe. Way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, hey-ah, hey, way-ah, hey. Way-ah, hey. And a child is born today, and she will be in the Indian way. And that child that's born today, and she will be Anishinaabe Aquare. Way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey. Way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, hey-ah, hey, way-ah, hey, way-ah, hey. And that there, my niece and nephews, is one part of the story. Miigwech. I'll turn it over to you, Jody.
Yawa. Miigwech. Wow. It was so good and powerful. And there's some really nice messages on the side here, questions and gratitude to you. And I shared your timeline, your new website, which is amazing. It turned out really good, eh? Do you like it? Yeah. Awesome. So you can see that at
now it can be found.
Yes. And thank you so much to Jen and Giant Shoe. They with Grandmother's Voice, we were Giant Shoe Creative. We were able to help support Alan and build his new website, which is so amazing. We also have him joining us in November. We're Grandmother's Voice, Dennis Windigo, Alan Sutherland, the grandmothers, Faith Hale, and am I missing someone else? Samantha Dockstader will be there as well. We have 2 days of sharing how we move forward in reconciliation. There was a question here. How do you imagine reconciliation to happen as a group? And maybe you can just share something like that, Alan, because like those days together, we have, I ideas, and the 2 days are going to be amazing. But maybe you could just share a
Well,
little
just
bit of
quickly,
hope right
just
now.
if you can now imagine the original peoples that were left out in the development of Canada, and yet they are part of the creating Canada. Now imagine this, that we learn from what happened, but we don't look at it as saying this is a flaw of us. It's unfortunate it happened over 150 years. But you got to look at the resiliency of Indigenous people and their contributions. We are the answers of an old dying world, and that's what I want people to understand, that when we are on our way, and we are now, this is part of it. This is the red shirts. You're seeing people wearing the ribbon shirts and their medallions and their skirts, like they're just showing their true identity, their true colors. And that's growing. That's a movement. But it's not just for Indigenous people. It's Kanata. This is an identity of all Canadians. And now we're on the scene.
Just to let you know, it's an orange shirt, but I'm just not sure if you're colorblind, or is there a reason why you say it's red?
Oh, because I'm thinking about the red shirt,
Red dress, red dress.
the red's dress,
Yeah.
because it's
I
all
was
part of 20. It's all part of 2010, when all these movements were sprouting everywhere, including the murdered and missing Indigenous peoples,
which is coming up at the end of the week, right?
and it all accumulates to this day.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm getting it mixed up there. I'm also getting older. I might
Yeah,
miss
that's okay, but I did
two
have to
things
say
here
that.
and there.
It's okay. We have lots of fun in our conversations. I truly appreciate you, Alan, and you know, I've been following Spirit for several years, and I remember the day that I called you when I was sitting in a parking lot with my husband. We were traveling for business, and I called your phone number that I found online, and you answered, and we talked for 2 hours. And I said to you, I told you about the journey that our sisters were making in our communities to lift the spirits of the people and share, just share knowledge in the best way that we can, in a good way. And you said, your area will be challenging because of how deeply rooted it is in colonization. And it was a challenge that we've taken on, because you said that you would come and help us, and you have. And I'm so grateful for you and Dennis and all the elders, the grandmas that continue to come and support us in this time and share your knowledge and your love, and to keep us, well in our mind, in our spirits, and in our hearts. And so we love you and appreciate you so much. And I can't wait to see you again in November. We're super excited for you to come and join us. And for anyone that's watching, please visit his website. I put it in the chat. I'll put it again in the chat, and check it out, because it was beautiful. The person, Jess, that created our website and is doing an amazing job. We have an amazing group of volunteers that are really supporting Grandmother's Voice, and the elders that work with us to really get this message of love and peace and moving forward in a good way. And so continue to watch us, share this video. It'll be on our YouTube channel and our Facebook as well. So you can just copy and paste it when it's live and just share it with as many people as possible. And then also a shout out to one of our most favorite groups of women in our community, Boa Boutique, who has supported us over the years, and today helped us sponsor this time with you, Alan, and for our community. So
I just wanted to say, Jess is under the weather. She's the creator of the website. Just wants you to get well, Jess.
Oh yeah.
And it's just the other day we said, okay, go and launch it, but there's still little things that we need to work out yet. But we're just making an official launch for November with your group. But anyway, you can still look at it. I can still work with it, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, it really is. So, you know what, to everyone, and you can, tonight we're actually in Oakville, hanging out with Lacey Hill and her friends at the Oakville Performing Arts. So you can join us there. And then also a shout out to the town of Oakville and the museum who is hosting us in 35 minutes to do our ceremony. We are on the milk run of prayer and love and healing today with Grandmother's Voice in our community. So, Nyawa, and
Miigwech.
we'll see you soon.
Kamahi.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too.